All right, RJ, I got a message here for you. I got a message on some realizations that I've been experiencing and wanted to start there. But today we're going to be getting into pre-screening tenants. RJ and I have been through many property management experiences. I would say that property management and tenants and dealing with tenants is probably one of the most intimidating parts of the real estate investment business, especially for new people, even for seasoned people. So, we're going to give you a lot of tips and tricks today. We're going to talk about the pre screening
Even
process.
for seasoned.
We're going to talk about the showing process, which RJ and I have we believe that the no call, no show for a tenant is likely the biggest time waster in the sport of real estate, right? In the whole thing, right? There's nothing more of a waste of time than a no call, no show, especially for tenants, because when you're trying to get a place filled, usually there's a lot of showings and stuff like that. Contractors are a bit more responsive because they're in business, right? So we're going to be getting into a lot of that. But first, I just wanted to start out by sharing a few things that I'm realizing. So today is day 100, RJ. Today's day 100 in a row of doing burpees. I do over 300 burpees every day. And it's the thing that I do, but nothing changes in your business, nothing changes in your life until two things happen. The first thing is being honest with yourself, being brutally honest with yourself. And I'm in the same motivational books as you are, RJ. I listen to the same podcasts, I read the same books, I watch the same reels, I watch the same motivation of you can do it. And a lot of that is good and it helps you and it makes you feel good in the moment. But we got to be honest with ourselves. When we're watching these reels, when we're listening to these podcasts, for the most part, we're sitting on our ass on the couch and we're actually being lazy, but it tricks our brain because we're getting hits of dopamine when we see these positive messages. And I'm all for the positivity, everybody. I'm not here to be a Debbie Downer today, but I'm here to let you know nothing changes until you're honest with yourself and you say, I'm sitting on my ass. How much time am I actually spending scrolling? And how much time am I actually spending doing productive tasks? And a lot of that for me, RJ, when I started to be honest with myself, it was when I was getting ready to get out of the NICU. I was in the hospital for a long time. I used the hospital as an excuse. I was under a lot of stress, so I was drinking a lot of alcohol. I would leave the hospital and just drink, you know? And I would eat a ton of food. I would eat fast food. I was getting $25 fast food bills and just stuffing myself because I felt so empty. And if you spend a lot of time at a hospital, it's not a positive, energetic place. It's not this positive place of like, lollipops and candy canes. Because you got to understand, we are receptors of energy. We are all empaths on some level. We pick up on the energy around us. So that's why when you walk into a room, if you're not wanted, you feel bad energy. Or if you walk into a room that's inspiring, you feel good energy. And nobody has to say a word for you to feel the energy in the room. Well, at a hospital, we got to understand there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of worry, and there's a lot of grief. And you pick up on that when you spend months on end. I was picking up on all that, but instead of utilizing and putting myself in a better state of mind through productivity, I was putting myself into a victim mentality. And that was just pounding myself with food and alcohol to change my state, chemically change my state, biochemically change my state with food and alcohol. And until I started to be honest with myself, where I started to look in the mirror and I was 209 pounds in my peak. I'm 185 today, one day at a time. But I just had to realize it ain't about the positive reels at that point. It ain't about the positive affirmations. It's about looking at myself in the mirror and saying, I'm a fat, lazy piece of shit. Like, to be completely honest with you, I'm living the role of a victim right now. I just be honest with yourself. You're not stepping up. You're not doing it. You're using this hospital thing as an excuse to change your state, fill yourself full of bad food and alcohol, and you're letting yourself go. You're not helping anybody by being this way. Sure, you could have all the excuses in the world. So, step one, that I had to do personally was start to be honest with myself, not from a positive standpoint, but from a truth standpoint, right? The second thing that is really showing results in our lives and our businesses and whatnot that I had to do is set boundaries. And setting boundaries is more so it's one of those things that's just not tolerating people's bullshit. And again, this probably sounds like, ooh, like I'm not trying to sound like I'm a tough guy right now. I'm not going to take anyone's shit. But here's the truth: start to pay attention a little bit, especially in the people that you work with and people who are supposed to be producing results for your team, and listen for the excuses. The excuses come in when it's like, well, in a sales atmosphere, it's like, oh, the leads are weak and the leads are cold, and this is not, there nobody wants to talk, or it's just all this like bullshit where somebody who's not producing wants to put it back on you. They want to put their shit on you, right? And the best way to sniff out bullshit, RJ, what is to shine accountability. Start to really track people's results. And it's like this: you go into a dark room that's a house that's infested with roaches, and you turn the lights on. What happens to the roaches? They scatter, right? So setting boundaries that you're not going to take excuses anymore, and then start to monitor people's results and hold people accountable to what they signed up for. And if it's not working out, it's best to just move on as fast as humanly possible. That's you shining the light of accountability, and the roaches will scatter. But guess what? The real producers and you're going to find a lot of amazing people out of those situations, and holding people accountable and setting boundaries that you're just not going to take excuses anymore. And you start that accountability flashlight, the roaches will scatter, but you will find A players. And what does Steve Jobs teach us, RJ? A players like other A players. You find the A players, and you could really build something special around them. So my morning message before we get cooking here on to tenants and property management: number one, be honest with yourself. If you're not producing results, take full responsibility. It's not this victim mentality. Take responsibility. If you're out of shape and you could be doing more, you're suffering, take full responsibility. Be honest with yourself. And then number two, stop tolerating people's excuses and hold people accountable for what they're supposed to be doing if you want to produce results. That's my message this morning. Good morning, RJ.
Yeah, it's a good message. I mean, a lot of it can relate to what we're going to go over today with tenant screening. The whole thing about what you're saying is, don't sign up for anyone's bullshit. There's a lot of bullshit going on with tenant screening, and you just got to call them out on it and have the courage to. For example, this is one big thing that I see going on a lot, where it just doesn't work out, is when a potential tenant will, write up in the application and use it's not their name. They'll use like their son's name, or their, family member's name, and then you're not checking it. And then what happens is that they didn't use their own name because they've got 5 evictions on their record. We see that a lot going on. So look, it just takes you being the right landlord, business owner that you are, and also the property manager at this point, to go and further look and who's actually signing up for your property. You just got to ask them for their ID, right? And what we also do, this has helped us a ton, because it just sniffs out the people that are running from eviction. And how our system works is that there's a lag time between when you're under an eviction and it being recorded at the county level. And so sometimes if they're going under eviction, you won't know. And the reason why they're really motivated to get in your place is that they're getting booted from the last place. So what we've done is we've implemented it's just a landlord verification process, where we're literally checking their past 2 landlords for references. And even then, when they send that form in, you have to cross-reference it. I hope everyone's taking notes, especially the ones that are new to this game, maybe even property managers. But you got to check on the auditor's site their previous address and who the owner is of that address. And does it line up with what they're putting into their application? Because a lot of times they're going to put their best friend on the application and as the landlord, and you got to do some digging around. You got to call, like, let's just say they're coming in from an apartment complex, right? And they're putting in property manager was, Steve Jobs, and they put the phone number in there. Well, before you even start calling that phone number, I would go into that um, apartment complex. A lot of apartment complexes will put their marketing online and pull it up. Pull up the marketing, pull up the address, pull it up, and then in the marketing, I'll probably have the property manager's contact information. Call the property manager or call the person that's behind that marketing and get to the property manager and then ask the relevant questions. How was the resident? Did they pay the rent on time? Most important. Did they keep the place tidy? And did they also follow the rules, right? And if any of those things are no or why they have a reasoning, then question whether you want that person in your property. You got to do that. If you guys are watching this live stream, live or after the fact, and you want that landlord verification form, type it in our comments, landlord verification form, and we will get that form out to you. Okay. Another thing when it comes to like tenant screening is the fact that it's an affordability thing. So you got to check also how much they're making a month to see if they can qualify for your house. And we recommend that, look, if you're asking for $1,500 a month in rent, they got at minimum, make that's 45.
3x. Yep.
Yeah. Right. So that's
3,500.
4,500 a month. Right. Because what's going to happen is they're so strapped for your rent that they don't have anything left. Let's just say they make 3,000 a month. That's risky because if there's 90% of their income is going to your rent, well, they can't pay for anything else. The utilities, they can't pay for their groceries, and it's just a recipe for disaster. They're eventually going to come and, you got holidays, people got presents and birthdays and just life in general. So you're really stretching your resident at that point. You don't want to do that. You're there. This is a partnership.
Yep.
Right.
We're there to provide quality, safe housing. There ain't no slumlords in this group. Slumlords never make it in this business. This is the thing. You always hear about a slumlord from somebody who owns no real estate. It's like this catchphrase. I'm sure they're out there. They do not make it in the world. That you cannot pass your Section 8. If you're trying to be a slumlord and you're trying to get like a Section 8 resident, they inspect your properties. You're going to fail the inspection. You're not going to collect a dime in rent. So as landlords, as property owners, it is our responsibility, not only from a moral and human standpoint, to provide clean, safe housing, but we're not going to make any money if we don't. And we're in it for the money. The only thing that matters when pre-screening a potential person that you're going to live with, listen, we could get into fair housing if you want. They teach fair housing all over the real estate school. Listen, do we care about race? Do I care about what race you are? I don't even know what race these applications are. I could care less about race. I could care less about religion, what gender you are, what sexual preference you are. None of that. If there's a landlord out there who's worried about that stuff, you got your mind in the gutter. You are like absolutely focused on the wrong thing. We are trying to run a profitable business here by providing safe and quality housing. I don't care what somebody's age is, what we care about is what RJ just said. There is financial obligations. You're entering into a financial contract obligation. So we need to know that you got the money to enter this agreement, period. I don't care about anything else. Next is what about your previous history? So, yeah, we're looking at some credit things. How did you fulfill your previous agreements? Obviously, that matters, right? There ain't no fair housing, anything about that. How do you do business? How did you live in your previous places? That's what we care about. And like RJ said, accountability is the key. Don't be afraid, pick up the phone, find out more about these people. If you're entering into a financial 12-month or longer agreement, this is tens of thousands of dollars here, everybody. Let's do some due diligence, right? So, yeah, first and foremost, don't even think about anything that's not financial or affecting the agreement that you're entering with this person. So, race and gender and sexual preference. Again, if you're even thinking about that stuff, you're losing this game already. You're losing the game of life, right? Because if you're worried about any political affiliation, all of this nonsense, pure distraction, completely focused on the wrong thing. So we need to know what is their ability to pay into this financial agreement that you're entering? What is their previous agreement history? Right? And the final thing is we care about felonies. We care about somebody's criminal record. Mostly, we're looking for violence. If somebody has a history of violence, that's going to affect this agreement because I'm not trying to have somebody move in to the property who has a violent tendencies. Maybe they're, I'm not trying to run a halfway house here. I'm not trying to run somebody who's fresh out of prison. They got, a
I'm frozen right now.
thing like that. We're only worried and we're only concerned about their ability to fulfill this agreement and their previous. RJ, you with me here?
So I was frozen. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
So the other thing that we're looking at is how long
You're frozen again.
have they been in there? We call that term gainfully employed. What does that mean? So if they are just starting their job, there's a lot of things that can happen if they just started their job. In most places, including ours, there's a 90-day period where they're on a probationary period. Okay? Like in our everybody's on a probationary period in sales here and anything in general. Within those 90 days, if they're not working out, we can simply just cut them. That's what we coined the term hire slow, fire fast, right? If it's not a fit, it's not a fit. So you want to make sure you're getting somebody in your home that has been gainfully employed for at least a year. A little bit more stability in that because they've settled in, they've got income coming in consistently, and they're not going to have these ups and downs in job stability. And that's one of the things that we learned because we've let tenants in before that are getting a letter of recommendation from employers, and they just started their job and it just didn't work out. Something happened like after that 90-day or 4 or 5 months down the road, they're running into financial difficulty because they lost their job, right? That's another thing you gotta consider.
Because that could affect their ability to fulfill this agreement that you're entering with. It's the only thing that matters. Gainfully employed is extremely important, right? So with that being said, let's talk about showing our properties and some safety things. Let's just cover a little safety and efficiency when you are showing your units and when you're showing your vacant units. So here's the thing, everybody. Like we had already mentioned, the no call, no show is by far the biggest waste of time. So make sure, number one, if you are physically showing up to show units, make sure you not only pre-screened the person and have them charge or charge an application fee. 25 bucks is sufficient in my opinion. 25, 35 bucks. This way that's going to weed out a lot of people right off the bat. Um, but sometimes people who are qualified based on their application and the paperwork, they're not going to give you the application fee until they've seen the unit, and that's fair, right? So this is what you got to watch. Now, what you want to do is definitely just call an hour before to confirm your appointments. It sounds basic, but hey, common sense is not always common practice. Do that. We have developed a system where we put our properties on lockbox, and a lot of people don't do this, and a lot of people are going to call me crazy right now, but we will facilitate showings over the phone, and we will give somebody the lockbox code to actually view a unit. But here's the key to that. Number one, you got to make sure they text you a picture of their photo ID, like a driver's license. Number two is you kind of need to, even if you're not changing your lockbox code every single day, you need to tell them, you need to put yourself in the shoes of like a leasing agent and basically be like, hey, call me when you're there. I'll give you the code. Don't just give somebody the code. Only give them the code when they're at the doorstep with the lock in their hand. And then you want to let them know that the neighbors are watching the property and we change the code daily. It changes daily. So I used to, when we would do it this way, everybody, I would do the whole kind of act a little bit and be like, hey, ooh, let me find out what today's code is because we change it every day. Let me shuffle some papers around in the background. Oh, okay, there's the code. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's today's code. We change it every day. Plant that in their mind so they don't think they know the code of this particular house, even if you're not changing it daily. What other feedback do you have on that, RJ?
Yeah, and then you want to check the house at least once a week, especially if it's vacant, minimum once a week. And then have several codes ready to go. Check it because once you have a number of showings, people tracking dirt, make sure that your place still looks good and it's locked and it's secured, windows are shut. And then, hopefully by that time you have several people already interested in your unit. Another thing that I do, Dave and I have done hundreds and hundreds of leases on our own before we even hired a property manager, is I would ask for their photo ID. So they would take, yeah, get all kinds of crazy stuff. There's a funny story where Dave was like, "Can you show me your ID?" And then somebody took a
You
selfie.
sent a selfie. My girlfriend at the time wanted to know who this person was. Her name was Lawanda, sending me this picture, of her. She's wearing a nightgown. And she sent me a selfie. I said, no, not a selfie. Lawanda, send me your picture of your driver's license. I don't care what you look like. I just need to know that you're a valid resident. I need to know that you're who you say you are. A selfie is not going to tell me who you are.
Anyway,
Lawanda was sweet. She ended up making a great tenant though, by the way. So once she actually sent it in, we got her applied, ended up living there for years. So grateful for her. We had a
yeah.
great relationship after that.
So yeah, so then we get the ID and then I like to even call them so hour ahead, half an hour ahead, like you call them text and just make sure that they're gonna make the property. But one way to make sure that they're really interested in your home is to also create this sense of urgency, and how we did it is like, hey, we've got several showings on this property today and already have some applications in. So that if you really want this, make sure that you're on time and you go through this property and let me know after the over the phone showing that you can do. You can even um you can even FaceTime them now. Now we got FaceTime while they're at the place so that they show you like, hey, I locked the unit, it's secured, everything's locked up, and they'll then you can ask them the next step, which is, something you say, hey, when are you going to get your application in, right? So that's uh that's our showing process in a nutshell. But in order for it to work, is you want to paint the picture that the properties are being watched by the neighbor. You have lockbox codes that change, and um, you need to go check that code. And what we've done in the past, we've learned, like we've had some squatters before in our units, and
Not a
so
lot though. It's typically worked out pretty well, wouldn't you agree?
yeah, it has. I think that we only had one, which we actually caught that person too. It's crazy.
Which one was that?
That was a lady in Linden, like
Was it
someone.
on Republic? Remember Republic? We ended up getting burnt on the whole virtual showing thing on that one. We ended up losing a little hot water tank, I think. Oh man, that was a crazy neighbors on that one.
Like that was one where we were just like, hey, go, here's the lockbox, go see it, let me know afterwards. Like, you know what I mean? Like there was no account, like there was no follow-up, there was nothing like that. Right. Um, so anyways, say like we still do it to this day. And now property managers that we use still allow us to control the leasing and the maintenance aspect. Obviously, we utilize their teams too, if it's something that they have reasonable pricing for. But this is our screening process. You know, you just got to paint a picture again, paint a picture that you're watching over it and the neighbors are watching over it. Um, we've had actual neighbors go in and you know check in on the property and let us know what's going on. But one last thing is you got to set boundaries. So if you catch them in a lie on the application, anything, if they put their friend's name instead of the landlord's name,
Anything.
anything, like if they just fib on anything, it's not going to work out. It's not. It's just not. So just draw land. So there's always somebody that's grateful, that's waiting, that you haven't talked to yet. They're coming. There's so many ways to, the Section 8 list is a lot. The list is so long. There's people on Facebook groups that you can post. Marketplace is a great place to do this. There's just so many renters out there. There's a shortage of housing for renters out there. So don't settle, set your boundaries, and you're going to be successful in this. That's it. I mean, the cheapest eviction is to say no. That's the cheapest eviction. You just gotta say no to them. Saves you 400 or 500 bucks. Uh,
SW, 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 SW. Some will, some won't. So will. So what? Someone's waiting.
oh man, sore today.
I'm sore too. I probably did 500 lunges. I was on the phone with RJ yesterday, just walking around a 400-meter track, lunge, lunge. I must have went through that run around that track three, maybe four times. It was one of those like moments where I'm like, do
What
more,
track? Where were you
do
at?
more. Right here, right at the little gym across the parking lot here. I've been trying to get you over there, RJ. RJ's too good for this little place here. No, it's a nice place. You met me over there and did some burpees one of these days, one day. But yeah, lunges. I'm all about calisthenics, everybody. We are RJ and I are getting our minds dialed in, our bodies dialed in, our spirit dialed in. It's amazing. And then our business dialed in. I mean, that is what is most important. Being the best version of yourself. Listen, it's not even potential. You know what's way overly used, RJ? Is the term, oh, you got to live up to your potential. It's not this like potential. It's you. That's you. It's not this like, potential. The only way to be your true self is to dig deep and you got to put yourself through some struggle. You got to go through the struggle because that's where you really learn who you really are. And I get a lot of that from working out, like lunges and Burpees every day, baby. Today I'm thinking about doing 330. Um, and that's it, man. So, putting yourself through the struggle, truly, I have learned you learn who your true self is. And that's going to help you when you're setting boundaries. It's going to help you when you're holding others accountable. If you know something's just not working, we just got to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, there's no time to waste. Now is the present moment. That's what's going on over here. So
Tate's asking, how do you feel about an open house for a couple hours on a set day for all
we've
interested?
we've never done it. I don't have a comment on that. Do you have a comment on that?
It works. Do it. It works. Yeah. So there's open house. Like we've had some um, past team members that did the open house. They liked it better. They showed up. That's fine. If I'm doing it the way that I know, which is what we just explained. And if and that's how because a lot of our employees are virtual, you know, so they do it virtually. All this stuff, all the extra stuff that's going on, all these other strategies and technicalities, yeah, they will work if you work it. Um, any other questions? We have a light day today. I don't know if you guys can still hear me. My internet is going in and out for some reason. Can you hear me, Dave?
I can hear you just fine.
So if you're interested in that landlord verification form, type in landlord verification form in the comment. Somebody on the team will be reaching out, most likely Rula. And happy to give that away. And if there's any other tools and tips and resources or any content y'all are wanting us to go over, let us know for next week because we do have some things planned for you, the audience, because a lot of you guys want to know about private money and buy and hold and what's going on in those two um, lanes of real estate. I'm happy to go over that on the next live stream.
Let's get after it, everybody. Let's make it a great day. We will see you next week, if not sooner. And be honest with yourself, set boundaries, core four, health, relationships, business, mindset. I say spirituality, but it's like mindset is more relatable, I feel. You know what I'm saying? Mindset. Keep that mindset. Everybody, we'll see you soon.